Hello and welcome back to another lesson of Logos and Letters. My name is Liam, and just to go over quite a dense point before we move on to something new, let's just once more go over this line here. So, Tode idos kai to genos periusian to poion aphorisdai. A really interesting point, and something that's quite true once you start to apply it to different ideas, is that the species and the genus have a qualitative role in defining one thing from another, setting a boundary on one thing from another. Now, of course, that is a intellectual move. It can be a conceptual thing. So to say you have grammar and you have poetry as two distinct species of a genus knowledge, in that case, that's a boundary set between the two. That is someone is setting limits between the two things. And you can say, because there's no physical body involved, it's just an intellectual thing. Whether it's a real feature of reality or not is another conversation. But the distinguishing between poetry and grammar, or calculus and trigonometry, or geometry and arithmetic, all these separations of species, which are not of like animals such as human, or even buildings, tangible things like buildings, or tangible things like different types of boats. Okay, so this rule that we're looking at applies to both the intellectual and the physical, and it is a basis for how we consider what role the species and the genus plays in the greater scheme of things when we come to classify them, when we come to understand why there is a distinction between them. And also to answer the question that might have haunted some people throughout this, or not haunted, but accompanied them throughout this journey. It's the question of, okay, you're saying that there's a species and a genus, and I understand what those two words are. I mean, we use them in modern science and zoology and whatnot, but do they do anything? Do they do anything? And yes, they do have a role. And we're looking, this is one of the first of a few investigations into that role. Okay, so they do have a role. They do have an informing process or activity in a way. So you have a primary substance first. Okay, remember that the primary substance, if it's red, okay, is first. It comes first. Okay, all right. You can't have the secondary substances without it. We've looked at that before. But the secondary substance sort of inform, like, I don't know how to draw a person that well. Okay, so they inform what how that primary substance sort of takes shape. All right, so there is this why does it look like an elephant? The primary substance comes first, and the secondary substance informs how that primary substance takes shape, manifests itself. All right, the primary substance is an instantiation of the secondary substance which it is a part of. Okay, so that is why we have different primary substances. Okay, we could theoretically have primary substance without any secondary substance whatsoever, but it would be indistinguishable, the one from the next. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of my masterpiece here, and we're going to pretend like we never saw it, that never existed. Okay, anyone claims that I drew that, I'm just going to say it was AI. All right, so yep, so that's the first point. All right, epipleion de toi genai toi aedai ton aphorismon poetai. It's good here to note, all right, at this point right here, it's not a complete sentence, but when we speak of a genus, of course, that includes more things. All right, so when you say the word animal, the roll call, if you will, using that metaphor from classes, is larger. There's a larger list of what's on the roll call. If you say building, okay, every building is a part of that roll call. If you say animal, every animal. If you say ship, every ship. If you say celestial body, every celestial body. If you say knowledge, every kind of knowledge. So obviously the genus and the genera in general contain more different terms. Okay, but now let's consider the next step. The next step is that the species, right, narrows down the amount of terms that you're talking about, but adds detail to every term that you're talking about. All right, so consider that if you, instead of saying animal, you said, let's see if I've got any images here. If you said, instead of saying animal, you just said bird. Bird is its own genus, of course, but now bird is a species to the greater genus animal. All right, so I forget how to say the name of this. It's like take, or it starts with a T, THKE, from New Zealand. This actually looks like Milford Sound a little bit. Or there's another massive lake near Milford Sound. It looks like Dusky Trail is like, this actually looks like the start of Dusky Trail, if anyone's done that, where they drive you on the boat to that lawn and then you start your trip and you got to go up. Anyway, this bird, this species, is a part of a smaller group of terms with more detail. Okay, and then you can go to flightless bird. All right, if you said flightless bird, flightless is a differential. All right, but you've if there's one word that signifies flightless bird, please tell me. But you've narrowed it down again, the amount of terms that the species contains, and you've added detail. Why is this important? Well, it is like parallel, almost perpendicular actually, to this point here. Epiplaion de toi genai e toi aidai ton aphorismon poetai. So definition, boundary. A greater boundary is made by the genus than the species. Why? Because if you want to contain a large group of things, look, it's just like a geometrical point. If you want to contain a larger group of things, you got to have a bigger fence, all right? A bigger boundary on your property. So the genus has this huge boundary, right? Huge circumference. And the species, which is smaller, you know, taken from that, has a smaller boundary and a limit, all right? And so the two ideas are quite complementary that we just spoke about, that I just spoke about with animal and knowledge and all those things, all the way down to the flightless bird, that I don't know what it's called, it's like the take or something. And so there are small limits. If you say all these different species, they have smaller boundaries, all right? But if you said all these different genera, okay, they have larger boundaries. And the reason why they have larger boundaries, because they contain more terms, right? So it's like a geometrical way of understanding this very real way that logic and language intersect, okay? Hogar sdoion ipon epiplaion perilambenai eton anthropon. So look here, if this is animal, sdoion, animal, the term contains way more, right? And perilambenai sort of gives you that idea of, peri means around, lambenai means it's taking or it's receiving, even it's lifting, like it's like when you lift something off a table or a desk, that's lambenai, right? You can say that. So it's the genus, the term for the genus, like animal, is receiving more things, where the species is receiving less, okay? They're receiving less. It's taking up less things, okay? So all those ideas sort of intersect. There's three ideas there. It's not essential that you get your head around it right now, but it is an articulation of how these three things play out inside our minds and why our language is the way it is, how we use it. So let's continue on with something new, keep the lesson short. So, huparkai detais usiais, kaedo medenautais, enantion ainai. Enantion. This is a key word. Contrary. So against each other. Enantion means like against, set opposed. Okay. So huparkai. So it underlies. Right. It's a feature of. It underlies. It underlies what? It underlies the substances. So first, second, third. Right. That there is nothing contrary to them. Nothing contrary. Nothing's being contrary to them. All right. What that means is there's no like opposite to what this bird is. There's no opposite to what being a cardinal, to any particular cardinal. There's no opposite. There's no opposite to being any particular saint. All right. There's no opposite. There's no contrary to any primary substance that I just pointed at, or any primary substance that you can think of. Nor is there an opposite to, say, a particular species like, let's have a look. I need an animal. Birds, right? Or pigeons or doves. There's no opposite to them. Right? Let's have a quick look at that. Teigar proteusiae tian ie enantion. Right? So against or contrary to the first primary substance, if one should say like hoion toi tini anthropoi e toi tini zdoioi. So how could one, like, it's a rhetorical question, how could one say that there is a contrary to the primary substance, like to a particular man or to a particular animal, right? This is the question mark in Greek, if you're wondering. That's the question mark in Greek. So, hoion toi tini anthropoi e toi tini stoioi. So, it doesn't make sense if you say, oh, this girl is the opposite to that girl, or that boy, or that chicken, or this dove is the opposite to that dove. Right? Doesn't make sense. We never ever say that, and we could never ever argue that. It's a bit of a strange thing to think is a feature of the universe. There's no real evidence to support it, not that I can think of, but if you can, please let me know and we'll have a good look into it. This archer and this particular owl of enormous proportions, I think it looks like an owl. People could disagree with that, but yeah, they're not opposites. Okay, maybe their positions, you could say, are contrary, up and down, but we will look at that later. So, uden gar estin enantium. We'll end it there, right? Because we looked at all of this stuff, quite abstract, and we also looked at this new idea. So it underlines the substances, that there is no contrary to them. All right. Uden gar estin enantium. There is nothing contrary to them. All right. So hope that makes sense. Hope that lesson was helpful, and perhaps it filled in a gap that I may have overlooked as I was speaking about this. It's you can tell that it's building this curriculum, if you want to call it that, but this course is building upon itself, and it's aiming to more and more abstract and more complex things, because it's in substance. But the next chapter is on quantity, I believe, and then quality after that. So, it goes from being quite abstract to quite physical. So there's something for everybody. If you have any questions about anything so far or what's to come, please let me know. And as always, si semper fortis and opere tuo. My name is Liam. and I'll see you next time.